The right to have children is a basic human right recognized around the world. The United Nations International Conference on Population and Development Program of Action clearly states, family planning programs must allow couples and individuals to freely and responsibly decide how many children to have and when to have them. No form of coercion should be used. Governments shouldn't enforce family planning through quotas or targets. However, under the Chinese Communist Party's rule, the number of children a family can have has always been controlled by government policy. Anyone who goes against these policies faces severe punishment, and the public has no control over their reproductive rights. Starting in 1979, the one-child policy was strictly enforced for 36 years. Let's take a look at how the Beijing and local authorities promoted the one-child policy during that time. Due to the long history of the one-child policy, China has faced serious issues like low birth rates, an aging population, and a shrinking workforce. To address this, the Chinese government allowed families to have a second child by the end of 2015. Then, in 2021, they introduced a policy allowing families to have a third child. However, despite relaxing the rules, the government still enforces marriage and childbirth pressures, especially on unmarried people. These actions are coercive and are just an extension of the one-child policy. The Chinese people still don't have true reproductive rights. Now let's look at how the Beijing authorities and local governments are promoting the current birth policies. These two extreme and completely opposite reproductive policies highlight China's current population issues. However, compared to previous decades, the government's push for marriage and having children through policies and mainstream media doesn't seem to be as effective anymore. Today, China's younger generation not only refuses to have children, but also strongly resists getting married. Let's hear from someone who lived through the one-child policy. I was driving through a village and saw a slogan on the wall encouraging people to have more children, saying that having 3 children is the only way to secure a good retirement. Isn't that ironic? Do you remember the old slogans? One child is enough, and family planning benefits both today and the future. It's hard to believe that just a few years later, the generation that was taught to have children later and fewer is now being pressured to change their mindset. People born in the 70s and 80s lived through the one-child policy and saw how strict it was. If you dared to have more children, your family's livestock would be taken away, your food would be confiscated, and if you didn't have livestock, they might even tear down your house. Now, just a few years later, it's so ironic. What I'm saying might sound unbelievable to younger people, but those who lived through it know how strict the family planning policy was. Back then, family planning slogans were everywhere, especially in prominent places. Walls were covered with slogans like, "Boys and girls are equally strong, they can both grow up to be pillars of the nation," and "Family planning is good, the government will help with your retirement." These slogans lasted for decades. But now the tone has completely changed. The new slogans say things like, "Only children will grow old alone, and 3 children is just right." But have you noticed? The slogans are loud, but not many people are actually following them. The main reason young people are unwilling to marry or have children is the pressure of living. Can just shouting these slogans solve their real problems? The most popular saying among young people today is, "I'm single and I'm proud of it. I don't deal with mortgages or car loans. I live freely. When I get old, I'll deal with small illnesses myself and face death alone if I get seriously ill." These words may sound sad, but there's nothing they can do. The pressure of survival in today's society is just too much. Can a slogan really solve such serious real problems? On February 8th, China's Ministry of Civil Affairs released new statistics showing that the number of marriage registrations in China has been declining for several years before 2023. In 2013, the number reached its peak at 13.47 million couples. By 2019, it dropped below 10 million, and 2 years later, it fell below 8 million. In 2022, it further declined to 6.84 million. By 2025, only 6.1 million couples registered for marriage, a decrease of over 20% compared to 2023. So what are the underlying reasons why young people in China are choosing not to marry or have children? We've identified the following key factors. 1. High economic costs are a major obstacle. Economic pressure is the main reason young people decide not to marry or have children. Today, the costs of marriage and raising children are much higher than they were in the past. Let's take a look at what these young people really think. If there are no surprises, the number of single people this year will likely exceed 300 million. Experts say we need to investigate why young people aren't marrying or having children. But what's there to investigate? It's simple, don't waste resources on this. Let me tell you the real reason why we're not getting married or having kids. It's because we're poor. As someone born in 1998, if the government gave me money, I'd get married right away. I'd go find a woman and get a marriage certificate immediately. Those who say young people are selfish for not marrying or having children really don't understand the situation. If you gave them 500,000 RMB in savings and a house with no mortgage, let's see if they'd still avoid having kids. With salaries that barely cover basic living costs, let alone a car or home loans, expecting them to carry on the family name and have a wife, children, and a warm home, do they really understand how high these expectations are? You need time, money, a stable career, and to deal with workplace pressure while avoiding people who try to take advantage of you. You also need to ensure your spouse is loyal, manage conflicts within in-laws, and hope your children can grow up safely in China's uncertain society. How hard is that? Nothing is easy. Some people criticize young people for being lazy or not striving enough, but in reality, they're afraid of the future. They fear not having financial security or their partner being unfaithful. Young people think, if struggling only leads to failure, then I might as well give up on things I can't have right now. Is that selfish? Who doesn't want to give their parents, spouse, and children a better life? 2. Work pressure and the intense endless competition phenomenon leave young people with no hope. Workplace competition in China is growing tougher, and many young people are forced to work long hours under great pressure. This leaves them with no time or energy to think about marriage or having children. As a result, many young people feel hopeless about the future. In Chinese history, no generation has been like today's, where people are afraid to get married and have children. You might wonder why. The main reason is that young people feel hopeless about the future. Even if they have a job today, they could lose it tomorrow. A company that's running today might be gone tomorrow. The future is uncertain, and when you don't see hope, how can you think about marriage or having children? Do you think young people don't want happiness? The real problem is that the money a man earns isn't enough to support a family. Most people only make 3,000 to 5,000 RMB a month. Is that enough? When you add a mortgage, car loan, and the cost of raising children, it's just not enough. How many people are in debt right now? How many have savings? It's possible to live alone on a limited income, but once you start a family, it becomes very difficult to support them. A man's income alone just isn't enough, and you might ask, what about the wife? Shouldn't she have children? But raising children costs money, and it's a huge responsibility. So young people aren't avoiding marriage because they don't want it, they simply can't afford it. They can't support a family. 3. Today in China, marriage views are changing. With social progress and the rise of individual awareness, many young people are questioning the need for traditional marriage. They believe that being single might be freer and easier, and they feel no need to take on the responsibility of marriage and children. I'm 37 years old and I come from a low-income background. I grew up in a single-parent family and went to a good university. Honestly, my income should be higher than many people's. But I haven't gotten married, and there are two main reasons for that. First, I feel disappointed with the world. Second, I'm disappointed with the idea of marriage itself. People like me who choose not to marry aren't selfish, it's because we don't want to hurt anyone. We don't have the inner strength, we've never been truly loved by the world, so we don't know how to love others. How can we take responsibility for another person, a family, or our children when we feel so powerless inside? I believe the greatest act of self-discipline as an adult is choosing not to rush into marriage or having children. So, what kind of person is ready for a relationship, marriage, or kids? It's when you're already full of love inside and you don't expect anything from others. That's when marriage can really thrive, and when you have money, life just seems easier. What's truly scary is when you're struggling, feeling weak with no love inside, and you're broke. If you expect your kids to grow up and give you a better life, it will only lead to pain. 4. The troubling bride price culture. In China, it's common for the groom's family to give property or a certain amount of savings to the bride's family before marriage. This bride price culture has made many young people hesitant to get married. Blaming young people for not marrying or having children isn't fair. The real problem is with our society and how the culture has shifted. Both men and women are equal, but men are expected to buy a house and a car for women. Who decided this was a must? Two people can work together and buy a house if they can afford it. But now, the expectation is that as soon as you get married, you must provide a house. If you don't, then no marriage. The practice of asking for a bride price has turned into a way of making money. To marry someone's daughter, you have to pay huge sums, 1 million RMB, 500,000 RMB, or whatever the amount is. The bride price is meant to show respect and appreciation for the parents, but making a house a requirement for marriage just adds unnecessary pressure on both men and women. If this cultural norm isn't changed, marriage in China could really break down. So I completely disagree with blaming young people for not getting married or having children. Finally, let's look at a video from a blogger. He says that the most ridiculous joke in China in 2025 will be a lawyer's statement. If you don't marry or have children, all your property will go to the state. This year has just started, and here's the first serious joke of 2025. Watch this video. If you're from the 90s or 2000s and choose not to marry or have children, your property will belong to the state in the future. I'm not trying to scare you. More and more young people are choosing not to marry or have kids, and many of them are only children. According to the Civil Code, the first heirs are your spouse, children, and parents. The second level includes siblings and grandparents. When you're in your 70s or 80s, most of your older relatives will likely be gone. If you don't have a will or anyone to inherit your property, it will go to the state and be used for public welfare. This lawyer seems to be trying to scare young people from the 90s and 2000s. Let's see how they've been responding. Why do you think I have property? If I can't spend it all, why would I even bother dying? Don't worry, I'll leave a nice chunk of debt for you all. I won't be taking a single bit with me. If I had an inheritance, do you think I'd still be avoiding marriage and kids? The sharpest response. This is the first time someone's trying to scare me with something I don't even own. My only inheritance is my body. Take it if you want. At least it'll save me the cemetery fees. Another blogger named Bai gave an even funnier response. She said, "I'm not getting married, not having kids, and I don't have insurance or a pension. When I'm old, I'll just break the law and let the state handle my retirement in prison." Someone once asked me, "What will you do when you're old if you don't get married or have kids?" Today, I had an idea. What do you think? Is it a good plan? Could it work? I'm in my 30s, single, unmarried, and childless. I don't have a steady income, and I haven't paid into Social Security or pension funds. Honestly, I'm used to living on my own. When my mom passes away, and if I don't have any money or income left, what if I commit a small crime to get sent to prison? That way, the prison could take care of me when I'm old. I'm thinking of getting a book on criminal law to see which crimes I could commit and how long I'd be sentenced for. Once I get out, I can do it again and end up back in prison. Wouldn't that solve my retirement problem? In prison, I'd be taken care of, food and shelter would be provided. I wouldn't have to worry about earning money or dealing with social interactions. Honestly, I'm not too concerned about freedom because I actually enjoy living a solitary life. Look at me, I'm so skinny, I barely eat anything, so I'm easy to take care of. I've even heard they teach things like embroidery and sewing in prison, and the food is simple but healthy. Plus, the routine is regular. It actually sounds pretty tempting. That's all for today. If you enjoy our content, please remember to like, subscribe, leave a comment, or share it with your friends. We appreciate your support and we'll see you next time.